Hello and welcome to the easternKicks podcast, a regular magazine programme about East Asian film led by me, Andrew Heskins, founder and grandmaster of easternKicks.com, and James Mudge, our leading writer.
Hey-o.
Each episode we'll be taking a look at the latest films, news and festivals, often chatting to filmmakers and stars along the way. Welcome to the show. With the director and star of Squid Games winning Emmys at the prestigious award ceremony, we're going to look back at the phenomenal success of their series and how much of a lasting impact the show has had on the anniversary of its first turning up.
Yeah, that's true. It's been a year.
But before we get started, we do have that important question to answer. That's what the folks want to know.
What are we drinking? Would that be?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah,
I'll let you go first, man. What are you on?
So, I've kept something a little bit special. It's the Duchess de Bourgogne. It's a nice little beer with a lady on the front of the label. Dark beer, as you can see. That sort of Bruges kind of style. But it's only 6.2. It's only 6.2%.
That's still a folly by any other name.
Yeah. How about you?
Well, since I'm coming at you live from the middle of nowhere on the west coast of Scotland, drinking whiskey, but probably would be anyway. But I have some Lefroy, but it's one of these weird ones which they call Select. So you get Lefroy Select. So it's not the 10-year whiskey. It's not the cask strength one. I'm never quite sure if these are just ones they're fobbing off on people a little bit. Well, for me, when it's on special offer, put it that way, it still tastes like Lefroy, but I'm never quite sure what calling it Select actually just what that quite means. But I'm quite happy with it, so fair enough.
Nice. So let's get on with the chat. Is it really a year since Squid Games first came into our lives and captured the initial zeitgeist?
It's crazy to think about. I mean, we'll be talking. It's just never gone away in the last year almost.
So it was 17th of September 2021.
Yeah, almost to only a few days away from a year to the day. In that respect, and
probably will be a year to the day, if not a little bit later by the time this goes out. Information correct at the time of recording.
But yeah, it's never gone away, and it's as you were saying with the awards and the Emmys and everything like that, it's still being talked about all the time. It's kind of interesting
when something, as I say, it's kind of easy to say that, capture the zeitgeist, but it is interesting, and we'll talk about this more. But when a program really kind of breaks through in such a way that within a month you're seeing even souvenir shops, you can get the masks and all that kind of and the sort of jumpsuits and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't happen that often, full stop. But then when you've got on top of that, what is a Korean show that was in Korean language, although I believe there was an American English dub of this, then for a lot of people they probably watched it on that version.
True.
But even then, for something to have this kind of be such a phenomenal success to just break through is really unusual. So for the two people in the world that haven't watched the program, should we give a quick summary of the show?
I think we can boil it down to its premise. I guess just a bunch of people who want money in an increasingly bizarre death game where they're whittled down their numbers until they get to a couple of guys who cry a lot when they have to do stuff to each other. It's basically what it boils, without being sarcastic, it is what it boils down to. It is that kind of death game.
Yeah.
The standard plot for it and everything that we whittle down the numbers at the start very quickly, and then gradually you get to know more of the characters and their melodramatic backstories, and we get down to the last few ones of them, everything. And Yeah, a lot of pop culture in there, a lot of colourful and bizarre games which don't make too much sense but are quite funny to watch, I guess.
Yes, yeah. Licking the cookie, the honeycomb cookie is one
Yeah.
of them. And I guess, it's a reasonable kind of universal. There are cultural aspects to it, but it's reasonably universal. And I think more, if we thought we were getting outside of the being able to kind of associate in our very real lives the desperation that people are going through, if anything, that's becoming even more so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's good. No, it's a fair point. I mean, that kind of the theme of needing the money for the various reasons the characters do and everything. Yeah, it's even more desperate now here and around the world.
So what kind of? I'm trying to remember the figure. What kind of views? It got an incredible number of views on Netflix. It was they're sort of number one for like months, I think, weeks. It was in their sort of top 10 for months, and
it probably could still well be. I'm not sure. This is one of these things with Netflix and everything. I think this was one of the first series which really brought that in, where people started throwing these figures around all the time, topping the charts in how many different countries. Like this is, it was number one in 14 countries. And where you get these figures from, and and knowing how Netflix are, they give their own spin on their figures because no one's. It's not like anyone's auditing them or checking them. So it's like the Chinese box office; they can say whatever they want about stuff. So I seem
to remember because when we did our podcast on Squid Games, nearly a year ago, it was pretty much number one in every territory apart from a couple, and I can't remember exactly which ones those were.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
there was only a couple of territories it wasn't.
Yeah, and there's no reason. I'm being slightly facetious because there's no reason to disbelieve it because it was being talked about by pretty much everyone. You were getting stories in the Daily Mail, which shows that you've broken through.
Yeah, it's one thing to become, the latest thing that the Guardian has to have at least one story per day.
A hot take.
Yeah, the hot take. The latest. The Wire kind of supplement, and it was Mad Men, wasn't it? After the Wire, but when you're in a Daily Mail, that's something else.
You've made it by them, but no, everyone was whatever the thing about the Netflix figures is, how true the figures are. It was being talked by pretty much everyone during its run, and then increasing. It picked up so much speed even after guys probably like us, who are more. You would watch Asian content a lot of the time anyway. But it was one of those few ones.
Yeah, personally, it took me by surprise. It's like, what is this? What? I was kind of almost came across it by accident. What do you mean? There's this really popular Korean TV show that everybody's watching. I'm kind of pinching myself, going, what?
Yeah, because I think even that is something we can. I think it's fair to say that we're not really sort of K-drama guys in the usual way, right? Like watching all the melodramas and the whatnots and everything.
True.
So I was surprised by it kind of as well.
Yeah, we're not massively.
Yeah, there's the odd one. We'll talk about some of the other series later, but in general, seeing there's a new Korean series on Netflix wouldn't in itself have been a massive thing. But then watching it, you're right. I was caught by surprise as well. I didn't see it coming, and how much of a global phenomenon it's really become, and the fact that we're doing a second podcast on it a year later, people are still talking about it and have been talking about it and everything. There's just been so much ongoing stuff, and there's no sign of that slowing down either. We'll see. We have the second series coming at some point. We have the apparent reality show game coming at some point from Netflix, where a huge number of people competing for money and presumably not dying in the process.
Well, I guess not. Otherwise, probably not best. But they're kind of Although they're kind of doing some of that on a lot of actual kind of other TV shows as well, where they're spinning a wheel of literal fortune for somebody to have their energy costs paid for.
Which is a sort of whole new kind of depression. But it's probably just going to be some it's a knockout type stuff then, like or Funhouse. people running along trying to grab money, getting sprayed off things.
Castle type.
Takeshi's Castle, yeah, exactly. Once you actually take the death out of it, then it would just be something pretty different. So I don't know. I mean, it's not a massive interest to me anyway. But I've seen some people at least like railing against the idea of having a reality show version of it and saying that it misses the point of the thing being a critique of capitalism or a critique of consumerism, and offering people who just want to be on a game show the chance to win a lot of money without any real risk is going against the purpose of the show. But so the director's kind of seems to have said himself, like, don't worry about it and take it too seriously. So which is probably fair enough. It'll be interesting to see what the reality show version is, though. I can't imagine I'll be rushing to watch it.
So you say there's actually a porn version of Squid Games as well?
Yes, there is. I haven't seen it or anything, but it's one of those. There was some things doing around on the old social medias, the Instagram and Twitter and everything like that, with full masks and
is it one of those ones
costumes
that's got a
and
funny
everything.
Title, or is it just?
It was it seemed to be a Korean or Japanese, so it wasn't like a Western one. So I don't actually know what the name of it was or anything. I don't think we had anyone like, Brexit with 3 X's, that kind of thing. Oh, Christ.
No, that's just kind of, no.
It conjures too many nightmares, even the thought of what's involved in that one. But there is, and if there's one porn version from Japan and Korea, there'll be a whole load of them. There'll probably be a whole load of a long series of different ones and everything of it. So fair enough, I suppose. I mean, it doesn't, like a lot of these weird sort of porno ones, it doesn't really jump out at you as something which would naturally inspire something, but full marks for sleazy entrepreneurism, I guess, getting in there for it.
And that's not the only place the only thing that's seen the Squid Game. So I mean,
no, I've seen it up here in Glasgow anyway. A couple of these kind of tacky, well, as you'd expect, sort of tacky tourist shops and everything with other sort of Scotland, memorabilia in Scotland, tourism and everything. They had Squid Game T-shirts and Squid Game masks for sale, and 3 of them, which I passed by. One of the kebab shops on Sauchiehall Street was in its kebab. It had some sort of Squid Game symbols carved into the kebab. And everything.
Okay, that doesn't make sense. I was thinking
it makes no sense
a fish and chip shop at least.
Well, with the kebab, once they actually start shaving the kebab down, I mean, if they ever do, I mean, that's some of these places debatable whether they ever shave them down or they just give you something from mystery meat from under the counter. But they were very proud of it. They had all the stuff in the window and everything like that as well. And again, full marks for entrepreneurs. I'm not really sure how we'd be getting to the clientele in that part of Sauchiehall Street in Glasgow. People staggering out of the Garage nightclub, drunk, going across there. I don't think they'd be thinking, Squid Game, let's go in there. I don't really think they're thinking of too much at that time as I would have been in my misspent youth.
지금 이 자리에 계신 여러분들은 모두 감당할 수 없는 빚을 지고 삶의 벼랑 끝에 서 계신 분들입니다. 게임에 참가를 원하지 않는 분은 지금 말씀해 주시길 바랍니다.
무궁화 꽃이 피었습니다입니다.
그 옛날에 어릴 때 하던 거 말이야?
But it's led to. I mean, another part of what we're talking about this is because it's won some Emmys, and I think which is it's a first for a Korean series. I think I read that it was the first non-English language series to be recognised. I don't know if that's exactly true, at least in terms of awards. There must have been other series that have been nominated in the past, but even then it's so there's a win for the lead star Lee Jeong-jae and of course the director as well, Hwang Dong-yeok.
Absolutely, yeah, it is, and you're right, and you do, like with those Netflix figures and everything, you get all these stats kind of thrown at you saying this is the first Korean series to do this is the first non-English language, so it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's what, but it got more than 10, at the Emmys and everything, like across all the categories, and it was also like Golden Globes, the Screen Actors Guild and all those other ones. So I've lost track of how many awards it's been winning, but almost every month or a couple of months there's been something where it's been picking up at these international ones. And you're right. I think the thing is that it's kind of, as with the Oscars and stuff, with Parasite and that, it's kind of stepping outside the usual sort of like foreign language or international, slightly art housey type of stuff. And these are like mainstream awards, which is actually winning everything, which is definitely a breakthrough. There's so many constant photos everywhere of like all the cast. There seems to be pretty regulars on these red carpets now and everything, and having a fine old time, and fair play to them.
Yeah, I mean, we're already mentioned season 2 of Squid Game, which whenever that comes along,
yeah.
So so we've got, I mean, that's on its way. Director Huang, he was named one of the 100 most influential people in the world of 2022, which I think, with the effect of Squid Games, is
I must admit, I'm semi-intrigued to go and look at the rest of the the other 99. Like, how do you, what influence? How do they chart these things? Anyway, there's no point in going down that rabbit hole, but it's an interesting one, to have given him this accolade. I don't know if he was number 100 or where he was ranked in this 100 and everything, but to be fair, I suppose, because he was like the writer, creator, director. It was 100% his show and stuff, and as we said, it has had a massive ongoing presence and everything. So it's a slightly weird one to give. But Korean Wave, whichever Korean Wave it is now, continues to be such a big thing internationally. So fair enough, I suppose. But, he was. As we touched on when we did the last podcast about this, he was a well-known director in Korea before anyway. He'd done quite a lot of blockbusters and some more serious films and stuff anyway. So then we had all that chat about him before. Where he'd said how much he'd almost killed himself trying to get Squid Game made, like losing teeth and hair, and it still just seems so bizarre to me. From a big blockbuster director, which he was, he'd done a lot of stuff like The Fortress, a bunch of other ones, and so he was. You wouldn't think someone like him would be losing teeth and hair over trying to get a series made with Netflix on board, but That was certainly the chat at the time and everything. So, now I imagine he's focusing just on Squid Game.
I think he's turned around, and he was kind of very gracious getting his award, and quite fun.
Yeah. He does. He seems like seems very, very nice fella, very into it and everything. So, I presume it'll probably take quite a while before we see the second series, because he'll, no matter what Netflix want, I imagine he'll probably take his time. He might have caught him by surprise the success as well. Yeah. And he made something, oh shit, now what do I have to do? I have to somehow continue this story into something which actually makes sense. But, fair play to the guy. And I'm sure he would
do one series. Damn.
I'm sure he's got his, if he wanted to do something else, he could at this point, I'm sure.
And then, the real big winner is Lee Jung-jae, who, again, we kind of touched on this before. His career was coming back, but, to think that he was the young lead in a really early, kind of almost pre-Korean way, but it was the first part, An Affair, in 1998.
Yes. Wow. Yes.
Little youngster as he was, and he had already his career, and then Ilmer and stuff like that. But
of course, I forgot.
In the 2010s, his career had massively waned, and it was on its way back. But now he's had all this attention. He's had his own directorial debut. Hunt. Played at Cannes
to acclaim. It seemed to actually go down quite well.
He's the Gucci ambassador?
He seems like a stylish fellow. I mean,
he does seem quite stylish. Although not the way he is in Squid Game.
Well, if he's crying all the time on the runway for Gucci, it probably isn't so good. Or if he's going House of Gucci style like Jared Leto, it's probably not so good either. But no, fair enough. Yeah.
And really making an effort to make that crossover into sort of, as other stars have tried before, to make that crossover into American productions. But it's never been such a big thing for Koreans. But I mean, we've seen the odd appearance by Song Kang-ho or Choi Min-sik, but it's never really caught on in the same way. But he seems to be making a better effort of it with being signed up for one of the next Disney Plus Star Wars spin-off series, of which there are quite a few.
A constant stream. The Acolyte. I'm getting it right this time. I had been calling it Andor, but
that's the other one.
But they both begin with A, and I don't care about either of them, so I think I can be forgiven. But yeah, but I mean, however that turns out, I mean, I think even Star Wars fans must be getting a bit sick of this stuff by now. It's still...
Well, it is. I mean, without going off on a tangent and a rant, but it is the Disney Plus way to milk these franchises that they own now.
Yes.
In the same way they're doing with Marvel, and to create 1,000,001 TV shows. The odd one might be actually quite good.
Could be.
I've not been particularly impressed by the Star Wars ones, but they've kind of got less to work with, really.
Which could be good. Yeah. Could be a good thing. They're not stuck to stuff, but you're right. Without going on to rant, because I don't like Star Wars anyway. So apart from the Emperor, I don't know. Fair play to him. We'll see how it turns out, but it's certainly he signed with a major U.S. agency. If the Hunt gets some kind of international distribution, I imagine having been at Cannes, it'll play other festivals. So yeah, I think he's certainly been a big, as you say, his career was coming back anyway, but this has definitely given him a major boost. And I don't like his character in Squid Game, but he's a very sort of quality thespian.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I think he does do it. I mean, I just slightly disagree with it, but I think he does do a good job of that role. I mean, you don't like the character, but
it's the character I don't like, not his acting. Yeah,
and I think he does. It's one of those things where I think he does a good job of a character that actually is written to be pretty unsympathetic, because he is quite good at making it sympathetic, even though he is a complete loser. So I mean, and lots of the other members of the cast have been doing pretty well out of this as well. There's Park Hae-soo, who's in the Korean version of Money Heist, which is one of those kind of Netflix series, and
big budget.
It's become a bit of a franchise in itself that I've not really personally haven't got into.
No, I haven't really got into it either. I was going to watch it, but then I think the Spanish one had. Somebody told me that footballer Neymar turns up in it, and I hate him, so I couldn't. I couldn't watch it. But I didn't hear good things about the Korean version of Money Heist either. But it's definitely a big budget one, I think. And he's had quite a few other roles coming up. He's in a few of these Korean ones turning up on Netflix, which Netflix have produced as well. So more roles for him. He was a pretty popular actor before anyway as well, so he's definitely had a bit of a leg up from it.
And then, I mean, the kind of one of the real kind of breakout successes, Jung Ho-yeon, who was really a model before she was in Squid Game, and I mean, she was really good in Squid Game. Her performance was great, and unsurprisingly, she's getting more model work and being in international music videos, and she's also in an A24 film.
The Governesses. I mean, it's A24 would be part of their massive marketing push and everything. Honestly, they're a tiny indie film studio. Not really, but that's another rant which I won't get into. But no, I mean, they do interesting stuff. To be fair, A24, or they put a lot of muscle behind how they push stuff. So it's definitely a big Definitely a big step for her. And she's going to be in Alfonso Cuarón's thriller series Disclaimer with Cate Blanchett. So she's getting a lot of these kind of breakthrough roles as well. And we'll see how big the roles actually are. We should put that proviso on what we're saying at the moment. But yeah, she's definitely coming off very well from it. And you're right, she was really good in it. She, again, her character was more interesting than his character. So yeah. But she is very good in it, and you can see why she impressed me. Her character had a more difficult job as much as anything else, actually, in it, to actually have her character arc. He didn't really have a character arc, but she did a really good job on it. So it's not really a surprise to see her getting more roles now.
And I think we're kind of going into two more of the cast, because seen several of them in various places. But, I mean, we've got Naomi as well, who wasn't a particularly likable character again, but has been a bit of a fan favourite. She was also in All of Us Are Dead, which we'll be mentioning again soon, I think.
But she wasn't a likable character in either, but everybody, she was not. She was a standout in that too.
And she's been won a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Guest Actress. Yeah. First Korean actress to win in that category. I mean, it has been, unsurprisingly, I guess, really pretty successful for all of the folks involved. But maybe to draw a line under that success, and the kind of, maybe we should kind of look at what kind of impact this has had internationally on how much we're seeing. And also, I mean, this did come, within, that's the same kind of couple of years of seeing Parasite as a bit of a breakout success, and also Minari as well. There's been quite good for actually kind of finally seeing these Korean stars and filmmakers and so on finally kind of reach audiences. But what came after? I mean, for me, I think there was definitely a point in that sort of few months after Squid Game, where there did seem to be quite a few more kind of mainstream focused in terms of an audience, not in terms of the genre, but sort of actually kind of more of an international focus kind of series coming from things like Netflix. We had a whole kind of raft of them, didn't we? We had Hellbound.
Yes.
All of Us Are Dead, which is a kind of popular zombie thing. Sweet Home, The Silent Sea with Bae Doona. As we already mentioned, sort of the Korean take on Money Heist, which was interesting to see. We're still seeing some, but it does feel like that's kind of fallen back now, and maybe it's just the kind of production timings, or maybe just the fact that nothing anywhere near reached out as far as Squid Game. We're still seeing some other things drop on various other streaming channels. There's a couple of things on Disney Plus with Snowdrop and Grid. Even Apple TV's kind of getting in on the act of Pachinko. Is it really kind of bringing much? Is it? I mean, it's interesting that these other channels are doing it as well. They're kind of looking at that side of things more. But are we really seeing a change in the viewing habits of the audiences? Are we seeing a change in terms of people like Netflix going after these things still? Or what you think?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think what you said a couple of minutes ago is right. I think there was an initial big boom. As well, just going from my own sort of interest in this kind of stuff. We did immediately after Squid Game. We got stuff like Hellbound, and certainly The Silent Sea
A lot of horror and sci-fi and stuff like that.
Which, genre stuff, which is great. But these ones were all getting mentioned in the mainstream media. I mean, I think Hellbound was mentioned by the Daily Mail as well for sick horror, monsters beating people to death, that kind of stuff. So we definitely had a period, I think, for the rest of 2021, anyway, because Silent Sea was, Boxing Day or Christmas Eve,
yeah.
I think it came out. So we had a period where this stuff was still interesting to mainstream viewers, but then it dropped off again, and since then stuff has kept going, and there's been a couple of ones which seems to have grabbed more attention, like that Extraordinary Attorney Woo thing, which I haven't seen. It's not a kind of romance comedy type thing, but it's definitely been dropping off since then. I think you kind of have this interesting balance between what Netflix wants to make is probably. There's been some of these ones which have been popular on Netflix, but which have not been popular in Korea. Because what works for the Korean audience is very different to what works for the international audience. So
I guess... I mean, it doesn't... It's not quite the same for television as it is for film, obviously. But there was a point where we were still kind of hitting from the desperation of getting these productions out to an audience when... the cinemas weren't open and all that, and I think that there was in some ways that sort of there was a knee-jerk reaction, and I guess there's a fear here that, well, not necessarily a fear, but a reality that maybe that's kind of swung back again, that there's a mix of perhaps there's a mix of timing, that there were all these series that were backed up at Netflix and they thought, okay, well, we've got something here, let's drop the next horror series. But also that some of these will be, in some ways, probably a bit more internal looking again in terms of getting those audiences rather than
I
think looking
so.
out to the West to make that success. Although to be whatever would follow on from to be the next Squid Game would be great for whoever gets there. But it might not be, like anything. It might not necessarily be a genre series. It might be.
I don't know. I mean, Squid Game was so high concept, and it was so even just visually, all the colors, the pinks and the greens and the yellows and stuff. Everything about it was so pop culture, and And I think a lot of Western people are kind of, we're slightly primed for that kind of thing as well, sort of wacky Asian. Oriental, bright colors and crazy stuff they don't quite understand. So I think Squid Game kind of tied that with a sort of very familiar, very simple, high concept death game premise, and as you said, like the desperation over the money aspect and the financial aspect and everything. So Squid Game kind of, for whatever reason, actually had this kind of perfect storm of elements which really spoke to people, very easy to understand. And I think you're right as well. Something you said before. I'm guessing a lot of mainstream viewers probably watched it in English, English dubbed and everything. Probably didn't even miss very much, or some nuances. But then, do you really care that much about the nuances in it? Probably not for mainstream viewers. So, a lot of these other ones, and I think, Hellbound was a very interesting case in that, because Hellbound was immediately being pushed as a very high concept thing, which was these demons appear, and you have. They're going to follow you. You're going to get this message. You're going to die. Then they arrive, beat you to death for your sins. And then when you actually watch the series, it's a crazy series. It's great, but it's a lot more complicated. Doesn't make much sense. It's like some of his other films, or film stuff like Pyrokinesis and stuff, or Peninsula. It's on his wacky side of stuff, but they were clearly trying to push it as something which it wasn't quite. And the Silent Sea was more straightforward. It was Event Horizon, like everything in space basically is. But a lot of these other ones, Korean drama or Korean series are they are very different, just in terms of pacing, the length, compared to Netflix series and everything. And it is very, very heavy on the melodrama, and it is very heavy on these sets of conventions which don't really work for international audiences quite so much. So and to an extent, there's always going to be different tiers of audiences. You're going to have like the mainstream ones who would grab onto a high concept one, and with Squid Game, it was such word of mouth. It was just getting passed around everyone. You had celebrities tweeting about it and everything. It picked up such critical mass about it. But the second tier, you'll have like guys like us who would watch stuff because we're interested in, you know, Asian cinema, and, you know, we probably wouldn't watch the K-drama stuff, but if there's a specific reason, like someone like, you know, an actor and actress being in it, or a good concept, we might. But most of the stuff that gets churned out, and, you know, obviously in Korea, like other countries, well, like we do in the UK, you know, they churn out so much TV stuff and everything. So, you know, what we would kind of classify or think of as maybe as being like a K-drama or something is just TV.
Yeah.
You know, over there, it's just so many series coming out. So, so much of the stuff which comes out, and Netflix as well is, it's not, it would be a long conversation, but Netflix is not doing particularly well because they have flooded with so much content and so much stuff. They've cancelled, you know, series they've announced. They've done one season then cancelled. So I think a lot of people are very much falling out of love with Netflix, and the downside
that actually comes back to what we're talking about here with the let's use that term, you know, the cost of living crisis, but, you know, where people are having to choose between subscriptions. You know, we don't all have we don't always have these games that we can enter in order to you know, in order to have our energy paid for, so we can afford to subscribe to X amounts of services. And
but also
Netflix is losing out to Disney now.
And I have recently got Disney because it's on a 1 month thing, and it's awful. I have to say, like, there's so little actually on it. I'm really surprised.
Well, that's because you don't want to watch the Star Wars and the Marvel.
True.
You know, maybe you're not a massive fan of
it's a fair cop.
Animations aimed at small children either.
Also true.
Ones with sort of major princess complexes that you're not perhaps the key audience. I think to a lot of people, they see Disney Plus as a lot of people who are parents perhaps see Disney Plus as an absolute saviour for them.
As a babysitter.
Babysitter, yeah.
I got it because I wanted to watch Prey, to be honest, which was good. I enjoyed Prey, and Fresh, that horror film, which was good. But yeah, there's a couple of series on there, as you mentioned, but there's not. Even when you get into their films and deep dive into the series, there's very little how to put it, sort of homogenous, generic content. There's very little which isn't, sort of American middle-class white audience content. There isn't much of it on there. Which is interesting
that I come back to that point again, that they have actually invested in a bit of Korean dramas, but whether that goes particularly far or it was just they decided to do is another matter.
But I think it can definitely be seen as a Squid Game effect. If Squid Game hadn't been this massive hit, I mean, coupled with all the other Korean stuff which continues to be popular, like the boy bands and whatnot and everything.
I think there is a big point here, and we've discussed it previously. But I think when you talk about the success of Parasite and you talk about the success of Squid Game, that's not building on the success of the Korean film that we grew up. Well,
yes, agreed.
Grew up with. We weren't exactly that young, but we're talking about Old Boy and
younger.
In our younger days, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance and all that.
Yeah,
and Kim Ji-woon and all that stuff. It is building on the popularity of K-pop and the fact that K-pop is mainstream now, massively mainstream. Sidebar: I do posters for a lady who does lots of K-pop events. It is massively in the mainstream. And that's. I think we're still seeing, even if something like Parasite or Squid Game kind of pop out, it's still building on that. It's that foundation. Yes. It's not building on their own. In some ways, not to their completely to their own merits. It is comparable with the way that anime is massive with kids and with teenagers now. In a way that we wouldn't have imagined back in the 80s and 90s. But it's all about Pokemon, and that brought it in. It's a similar way in for so many people. Pokemon and Dragon Ball has kind of brought a massive audience to anime, and it's to me it still feels like it's part of that success, not the other way around. So what happens next, I think, is in terms of in general with Korean drama, particularly people like Netflix are actually probably not going to be paying out, or not going to be paying big money for bigger seasons.
No, and with Netflix, I guess it's kind of the balance between what they buy from Korea, which has been made for a Korean audience. We'll say, I mean, I haven't watched it, but that Extraordinary Attorney Woo is a Korean series for a Korean audience. It's it's longer. It's not like a Netflix 8 to 10 episode thing. So how much they balance sort of buying stuff like that with investing in series, which they would steer towards an international audience as well. So yeah, it will be interesting to see that. But we'll see what happens. And I think when we see Squid Game 2, whether it's 2023 or 24, and from everything I've read, just seems to be spinning wheels, spinning plates, man. I don't think there's much of a clue about anything which is happening with it or when it's coming. We'll see. It'll be very interesting to see if that has, anywhere near the kind of impact the first season has had and everything. I would imagine, they'll want it to have the same very compact, high concept premise and everything. But I'm sure the director doesn't, after losing all his teeth and everything, he probably just doesn't want to do the same thing again, unless he needs to buy some more falses.
And I think the other thing there, and I think we said it even back when we spoke about Squid Game last year, is that the if it is a long wait between seasons, then you very quickly lose your opportunity to reach those audiences. It's like waiting for the next season of Westworld or whatever, and it's been so long. You're like, okay, so what happened?
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, high concept sci-fi series. I can't remember what happened at the end of the last episode.
But you're right. Attention spans are what they are, and because it's a Netflix series, and so many people are just used to Netflix cancelling stuff after one series and everything. So if it's disappears for 2 years, I mean, at the moment we're as we started talking about it being constantly in the public eye, but there has been reasons for that. It's not because the constant popularity of the show. It has been the staggering of like the award ceremonies, or at least over the last 6 months and everything.
Yeah.
But
that's going to fade over the next 6 months, and then
exactly, and
there's not a season coming pretty soon after that. Then
no, it'll be.
The
I'd be
momentum
surprised.
will be
another
lost.
year at least, and whilst we recognize, we know the stars, we know the director and everything like that, and we'll continue to see other stuff. Like your mainstream audience is not going to start watching Korean films. I mean, The Hunt, his film, or just Hunt, I forget if it's or not, but if that gets released in the UK, that's not necessarily going to. Oh, that's the guy from Squid Game. Let's go and see a Korean film. I mean, that's not going to. I don't know. I would be surprised. I've been wrong many, many times in the past, but I would be surprised if we saw that kind of knock-on effect for because we're still getting the odd Korean film being released, but there's not been a massive boost in general interest in Korean films and everything.
Actually, what has happened though? There's been a lot of. Looking ahead at the upcoming London Film Festival, where the majority of Asian content by a long shot is from Korea or involving Koreans. At the same time, Hirokazu Korida, his new film,
Broker,
is with Korean. A completely Korean cast with Bae Doona, who obviously he worked with before in Airdol. Kang-ho as well from Parasite, so it's kind of inadvertently reuniting those two again. And other stars. It's interesting to see. That does feel like that is connected to this, and it is, and I think again maybe it does come back to sort of K-pop effect, but this idea of this ascending star of Korea and. Doing these productions in different territories that are, we're doing a film in Korea rather than Japan and stuff like that. It does feel like it potentially is kind of part of the same thing, and maybe he just wanted to do Korea. Drive My Car had a Korean member as well, so it's maybe there is something in that side of the effect between with directors thinking, okay, well, whether they kind of deliberately mean it or not, it does feel kind of they're kind of dipping into some of that with their choices they're making.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. And like, with Lee Jung-jae being in the Acolyte, the Star Wars thing, maybe that's what we'll see. Is we'll see some more Korean stars appearing and stuff. Maybe Hollywood has been, I think, very understandably burned with trying to work with mainland China. So much there was so much hope for co-productions and for cross-pollination of stars and everything, which obviously has not happened and has wasted a huge amount of time and money. But maybe there'll be more of a model with Korea, for starting off with more stars appearing in both, and very fashionable stars if they're all seem to be Gucci ambassadors for different brands and everything like that. So sure, it'd be great. It'd be great to see. As we've said, like, it's not related to the kind of Korean waves and stuff which we've experienced, but even if it comes off the back of K-pop and whatnot and everything, then it's still it would be so good to see, both from a point of view of more films getting released, or I don't know, I still think there's going to be a bit of there is quite a cultural difference in the audiences between them and everything. We're still seeing, even with the Korean films which are on Netflix, which they've co-produced, you can pretty much set your timer. They're all like 2 hours 19 minutes. I think there's one or two which are 2 hours 13 minutes, and it's still like the last 15 minutes is crying. So we're still, and on the one hand, kind of joking aside about it and everything, like, on the one hand, this is like with the K series, they'll go on for much longer than a standard Netflix thing. They will have a lot more melodrama, even in the genre stuff. So I guess when you're getting to sort of, if we get to a stage of these kind of co-productions or things, that there'll need to be a way to sort of make it attractive and palatable to both audiences and everything, because that was one of the big problems with Hollywood trying to work with China in that respect, was the audiences are so different and what they wanted was so different, and there was just no way to meet in the middle. So we'll see what happens, but it would be great if we even just from our sort of slightly smaller scale point of view, if we saw more Korean films making it over here. Ideally, genre films of 90 minutes, but seems probably not too likely.
It's been unusual still, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a while since anything like that. They're not even churning out so many old ghost films in Korea anymore as they were. Although, there's been a few over the last 4 or 5 years, but not as many as there was during those kind of post-Ring boom and everything like that.
So that's it for now. Don't forget you can find all of our previous episodes on Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe now and you'll never miss an episode. But for now, cheers!
Cheers!